What's up, beautiful people? It is our Thursday edition of Time to Shine. I'm Chris Williamson alongside Gary Parrish. Gary, not a whole lot going on in sports these days. Pretty boring.
It has been the opposite of boring. We've got big-time college basketball happening every night, controversy in college basketball, and then, of course, NBA season gets restarted tonight. It's a fun time.
Yeah, sports fans' absolute dream, and a lot to get to today. We're ready to shine, starting in the NBA. So the Hawks fired head coach Nate McMillan on Tuesday. They have reportedly started formal discussions with Quin Snyder about the position. So, Gary, I know you talked about it yesterday on the show. How do you think Snyder would fit in with this current crop of Hawks players?
I think he'd fit in well because I think he's the best available coach on the market. So it's sensible that Atlanta would be interested in him, and it's also sensible that Quin would be interested in Atlanta because if nothing else, this is a franchise that's got two all-star level guards in Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. And just a couple of years ago, it is a franchise that participated in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's been mostly downhill since then. That's why Nate McMillan was fired. But Quin Snyder is immensely respected throughout the sport as a great basketball mind. And assuming they could get this done soon and get him on the sideline quickly, there's still a chance for Atlanta to break into the top 6 of the East. Right now, they are 8th in the East, but just 3.5 games out of 6th with 23 games remaining. And so the thought among that Atlanta front office is, let's get Quin Snyder in here ASAP and see if he can be the spark that turns this season around.
I was going to say, sometimes it's all you need is just a different change, in coaching or whatever, a different voice, and that's what really sets the pace. But now let's shift to college basketball. We witnessed a huge upset last night as Boston College, that's right, took down number 6 Virginia. The Eagles held the Cavaliers to 48 points on 32% shooting. A big win for this Boston College program and a blow to UVA's tournament resume. So what does this mean, Gary, for their overall tournament resume?
Well, it's not helpful because this was Virginia's first loss outside of Quadrant 1 on the season, and it is a Quadrant 3 loss. And it is also a reminder that Virginia still looks similar to some of its best teams under Tony Bennett in the sense that they play really slow and they sometimes struggle to score. But this is not an elite defensive team either. Some of Tony Bennett's best teams, his national championship team, they were top shelf defensive teams. This team ranks out of the top 25 in adjusted defensive efficiency according to KenPom. Simply put, when you're going to be a low possession team and you're not elite defensively, you've got to be better offensively than what Virginia is. They've now scored 61 or fewer points in 3 straight games. They're averaging 55 points in their past 3 games. That might be good enough to win, ultimately, a weakened ACC. But when you don't guard at an elite level and you don't score well at all, that's how you're going to get beat pretty early in the NCAA tournament, I would assume.
Absolutely. Only one player in double figures on the night, and they struggled against Louisville and Notre Dame, so they have to figure it out. But in the Big East, number 18 UConn took down number 20 Providence 87-69. Gary, what stood out to you for the Huskies in this win?
That UConn is starting to look like the team it looked like when this season started, and they opened it by going 14-0 with 13 double-digit wins, including a double-digit win over the Alabama team that the selection committee just last weekend said would be the overall number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So there was a time where UConn looked like, if not one of the best teams in the country, maybe even the best team in the country, but then they had a rough stretch where they took some losses and people started to ask some big questions. But now they're 5-1 in their past 6 games. And again, looking like perhaps the Big East team with the highest ceiling once we get to the month of March. Beyond that, it was a big moment for Marquette because Providence losing means Marquette now has a 2-game lead in the Big East standings with only 3 games left to play. And Marquette is going to be a significant favorite in all 3 of those regular season games. In other words, barring a surprise, and it would be a big surprise at this point, Marquette, after being picked 9th in the preseason Big East poll, is going to be your outright Big East champion. And that's going to make Shaka Smart your undeniable Big East Coach of the Year.
Yeah, who would have thought? Like, nobody expected Marquette to be in this position, but that's why you play the games. Now, staying in the SEC, Kentucky really bolstered their tournament resume with a win over Florida. Oscar Tshiebwe led the Wildcats with 25 points. How excited are you to see Kentucky and what they can do in the NCAA tournament?
They're starting to look like the team that maybe they were supposed to be in the preseason. To be clear, I don't think they'll ever be, the top 5 team they were projected to be. But the context matters, and this is a team that started 1-3 in the SEC and was really, on the bubble, if not the wrong side of the bubble. Since then, the Wildcats are 9-2 in the SEC, and they now look like they're safely going to be in the NCAA tournament, which is not something anybody was willing to say even as recently as 2 weeks ago. Xavier Wheeler being injured plays a role in this. I'm not willing to go as far as to say they are better without him, but what I can tell you is that he's played some games this season and he's missed some games this season, and it is undeniable that Kentucky has a better winning percentage without him than they have with him. He remains sidelined with an ankle injury. When that's better, I'm not sure how John Calipari will handle that. But again, given where Kentucky was not too long ago, this season has been turned around and they're in a good place right now.
Absolutely. And Chris Livingston had a huge putback in that game. Looked like Florida was going to come back, but they get that putback, and then the rest is history now. Wisconsin, though, Gary, has been sitting right on the bubble, and their defense stepped up last night against Iowa. The Hawkeyes shot 3 of 28 from downtown as Wisconsin pulled out a 64-52 win.
It is a big win for the Badgers because they were below 500 in the first 2 quadrants before last night, and that doesn't disqualify you from an at-large bid, but it's helpful if you're not below 500 in the first 2 quadrants. Now you see it there, 5-6 in quadrant 1, 5-4 in quadrant 2, added up 10-10 in the first 2 quadrants. They do have a quadrant 3 loss as well, but still, that's a resume that probably gets you just on the right side of the bubble right now. Wisconsin, relative to preseason expectations, a little disappointing, but if the pass-fail line is make the NCAA tournament or don't, it now looks like Wisconsin is in a position to pass.
Yeah, they're definitely in a position to pass, and they have dominated Iowa. 15 of the last 18, they have won those games against Iowa. Now, speaking of Wisconsin, Aaron Rodgers emerged from the darkness last night. The 4-time MVP reportedly left the dark room at the Oregon facility for his retreat, and we'll see if a discussion or if a decision on his future is looming, Gary. Aren't you fascinated by this?
I'm confused. I think maybe a more appropriate word than fascinated. I won't pretend to understand why you need to go to Oregon to sit in a dark room. Like, I got dark rooms at my house. I could do it at my home, But whatever. I don't need to understand it. Only Aaron Rodgers needs to understand it, and now we all wait to find out if he's going to play football again. I suspect that he will, and he'll make that decision publicly known at some point within the next month, because the Packers have said they are not putting a deadline on Aaron Rodgers, but they would like to know something by the start of free agency if possible. I think that is possible. We'll know something in the next month, and I'll be surprised if he walks away at this point in his career, because he has publicly stated he still thinks he can play at an MVP level, and if you still think you can play at an MVP level, I don't know why you walk away now.
Yeah. Will you be surprised if he walks away from the Packers and chooses another team?
No. Ultimately that would have to be a trade because he's under contract. Right. But no, at this point I wouldn't be surprised if he's traded. That Packers-Rodgers thing, I don't want to say it's run its course, but it feels like everybody might benefit from a fresh start somewhere else. And so that's certainly on the table. I think returning to the Packers is on the table. Getting traded somewhere, perhaps the New York Jets, that's on the table. Either way, I think you will see Aaron Rodgers as a starting quarterback in the NFL next season somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And he has a lot of millions to come back into the NFL.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell for more videos.